Welcome. I'm Heather Craig speaking to you from Raleigh, North Carolina, on behalf of the Psychoanalytic Center of the Carolinas. I'm a psychoanalyst and a mother. I was also a child once, complete with parents. And I'm speaking today not as an expert, but as someone who loves attachment concepts and also loves the circle of security. So today's program will focus on fundamental concepts from attachment theory and research. And I will show how these important ideas are illustrated in the Circle of Security Parenting Program, which is an 8-week reflective education program for parents. Now, William Faulkner wasn't a psychoanalyst, but he was certainly onto something. Because when we speak of attachment, we're addressing relationships at two levels. First, the actual relationship between baby and her caretaker. And second, the internal relationship, how we carry those relationships in our minds years later when we're grown. Attachment theory is what we call an object relations theory, a school of psychoanalysis that emphasizes the quality of our internal relationships, how we carry our early patterns of relating in our minds, how we expect others to treat us, and even how we regard our own emotions. For example, as a crying baby, we may have been held with tenderness and concern. And so as adults, we feel accepting of ourselves when we're upset, and we expect others to treat us with kindness as well. But some babies have been handled brusquely and with resentment. Some are even told, "I'll give you something to cry about." It makes sense the way caretakers have responded to our distress will show up not only in how we expect others to treat us as adults, but also in how we regard ourselves when we are currently in pain. These patterns of expectation, these early foundational beliefs about self, others, and the world are then unconsciously enacted with our romantic partners, with our children, and also in therapy, where we hope to engage and remodel those patterns. In psychoanalytic therapy, that's what we call working with the transference. Now, that is attachment theory in a nutshell. But before we dive into a fuller account, let's take a look at this delightful video that introduces Circle of Security Parenting, illustrating some of the attachment concepts we'll examine today.
Parents, we all wonder if we're getting it right. We want to know we're meeting our children's needs, helping them grow, and giving them all that we can. We try to combine our own experience of being parented with the advice of others and our own instincts and beliefs about what is best. And still, we so often worry that we're not succeeding. In a world that is always offering the next best parenting solution, the Circle of Security is based on decades of attachment research. Unlike many behavioral perspectives, it offers relationship tools to provide a new way of understanding your children's needs, creating lasting security for them and more satisfaction for you. The circle graphic has been created to help you know what to look for, so you can read your children's behavior to guide you in meeting their needs. It's really not complicated. People of all ages have attachment needs. These needs can be divided in 3 ways. Let's look at this child. First, he needs to know the freedom and confidence to go out and explore his world. Second, he needs to feel assured that whenever he's ready, he can come back for comfort and protection. Third, he needs his caregiver to be in charge in a kind way. 3 basic needs that can be thought of as going out on the circle, coming in on the circle, and hands on the circle. Let's have a look in more detail. Feeling safe and supported, our children want to discover their world. When going out, they need to know that their exploration is encouraged, that we're right there watching over them, delighting in them, offering help when needed, and ready to enjoy their new adventures with them. And when they're coming in, they need us to refill their emotional cup. This means organizing their emotions and letting them know we are delighted to welcome them back, protect, comfort, and understand them. The key for us as parents is to remain strong and kind while knowing when to encourage their going out into the world and how to be available to welcome them back to us. It's crucial that we learn to identify our children's needs like this, because misreading them, or worse, missing them altogether, can cause pain and frustration. We all know how uncomfortable it can be to be held too close when we want to be out exploring, or kept at a distance when we need emotional support, or simply to be without someone who is bigger, stronger, wiser and kind, who we can trust to understand what we need when we're feeling lost, confused, or out of control. When a child misbehaves, the cause is often rooted in how safe and secure they're feeling. So it's not surprising that they behave well when a parent learns to tune into their child's needs on the circle in this way. And because our needs on the circle never disappear, learning to read cues can help you better understand and meet the needs of people of all ages, including your own. So that's all there is to it. Just know that at any given moment, your child is somewhere on the circle asking you to meet a need. Support my going out. Welcome my coming in. Be the hands that keep me safe by staying in charge and committed to helping me feel connected. And please remember this, there's no such thing as perfect parenting. At Circle of Security, we've come to realize that good enough is, well, good enough. All of us are going to miss needs on the circle time and again. Welcome to the club. But if we meet our children's needs enough of the time, the results will be happier, healthier, more secure children, and parents too.
Good enough parenting. That's a nice shout out to our friend D.W. Winnicott. So the ideas of psychoanalysts, John Bowlby, Winnicott, Balint, Guntrip, Fairbairn, Bolas, Mahler, and Fonagy are embedded into the Circle of Security parenting program. And as you know, psychoanalytic ideas, which are rich and complex, can be difficult to translate into simple language and images, which is why it seemed like a miracle when we discovered Circle of Security parenting. This reflective education program for parents is a brilliant distillation of attachment principles into images and videos that anyone can understand. In this talk, I'll move back and forth between attachment theory and research, and how Circle of Security translates these concepts for parents. This presentation is a basic, and I mean basic, introduction, and in no way comprehensive. But later on, I'll give you some suggestions for reading if you want to dig deeper on your own. So let's dive in. What does secure attachment look like in a child? First of all, I matter to you. I'm worth something to you. I'm connected to you, and in your eyes, I am good, even delightful. So that would be like healthy depending, healthy connection, really. Then we have healthy separation, healthy exploration. I can make things happen. I'm curious. I am motivated to learn new things. I can persevere. That's healthy separation. And then when I don't feel good, I can turn to you. My feelings can be understood, and I can recover from adversity. And there's affect regulation. And the last bullet, my mistakes can be repaired, which is a sense that even when things go sideways between us, we can work that out and become connected again. So attachment is not about being joined at the hip with your child, but having the kind of a connection and support that allows the child to look around, explore his space, learn skills, make friends, and eventually take its place in society, both well connected to loved ones while having a good sense of self and agency in his own life. Our attachment story begins with John Bowlby, who I think of as the godfather of attachment theory. When Dr. Bowlby practiced as a child psychoanalyst in London during World War II, this was the scene. 10,000 Jewish children had been brought to live in Great Britain, rescued from Nazi persecution. And nearly 2 million British children were also separated from their parents and sent to live in the countryside to protect them from bombs dropping on the cities, all of which added up to a mental health disaster on a massive scale, involving the separation of children from their parents. Having studied ethology and evolutionary biology, Bowlby posited that children have an instinct to seek proximity to a specific person who will offer protection and care, so that the physical closeness of the mother, or the most important caretaker, provides a sense of physical and emotional safety, while its absence poses a threat to the child's physical and psychic survival. The child will attempt to maintain the tie to his caretaker at any cost to himself because his survival depends on it. To lose contact with his caretaker causes extreme distress and may result in depression, withdrawal, and sometimes even death. Bowlby viewed the parent as a secure base from which the child may explore the world, and also a safe haven for the child when she is frightened or upset. Looking at the simplest circle of security graphic, we see the hands representing the caretaker in an attitude of availability, providing Bowlby's secure base and safe haven. Meanwhile, the child exercises his innate instinct to explore the world, called going out on the top of the circle, and an instinct to seek comfort and protection from his caretaker, called coming in on the bottom of the circle. So why does Bowlby's work matter? His work on attachment focused primarily on the ill effects of separation between parent and child. And Bowlby was a man on a mission, in part because of losses in his own young life, and in part to combat harmful policies of the day. For example, in hospitals at the time, parents were not allowed to stay with their sick children. Indeed, visits might only be allowed once a week. And why? Well, because seeing their parents made children cry, and that was troublesome. In fact, one of Bowlby's colleagues, Robertson, created a video called "A 2-Year-Old Goes to the Hospital." Many of you have seen this, and you can get a clip on the internet, which shows a little girl, 2-year-old, before hospitalization, during the hospitalization without her parents, and how her personality has changed afterward. So it's very, very important work. So Bowlby was fighting against an attitude of insensitivity to the feelings of children, fighting against the idea that they'll forget eventually what they have suffered, and it won't matter in the long run. His work has had a powerful public health message, changing, for example, the way hospitalized children are treated today. I mean, right now, a parent has to stay with their child 24/7 while they're in the hospital. The next person in our attachment story is Mary Ainsworth, who as a young woman worked with Bowlby as an assistant. Being trained as a researcher, she took the field of attachment to a whole new place. Ainsworth began to study the quality of the relationship between mother and child. The quality. First, she did observational studies focused on the mother's responsiveness and sensitivity to the child. And then she developed an ingenious research tool called the Strange Situation. The original Strange Situation research was done in the 1960s, and since then has spawned many thousands of studies, making attachment research the dominant force in developmental psychology today. Let me tell you about her Strange Situation research. Ainsworth selected 26 pregnant women who were then observed at home during their baby's first year of life. During that year, each mother was observed for 72 hours with her child in 4-hour chunks. That's a lot of time. Researchers observed patterns of interaction around feeding, crying, smiling, cuddling, and eye contact. But particularly, they were noting the mother's sensitivity of response. For example, does the mother respond to the baby's signals of hunger, or does she feed the baby when it's convenient for her, or even on a schedule? Following the year of observation in the home, the 1-year-old babies and their mothers were brought in for a laboratory procedure called the strange situation. Their interaction is videotaped and consists of 20 minutes of increasingly stressful separations and reunions with mother. Essentially, mothers asked to leave the room and return several times. The moments of greatest importance turned out to be baby's reaction to the mother's return. Based on these observations, Ainsworth classified children into 3 groups, each group reflecting a different quality of attachment with mother. Everything you read today about attachment styles began with Mary Ainsworth. So now I'm going to play a short video that shows moments of reunion that illustrate what different attachment strategies look like in 1-year-old babies.
This experiment, which I watched through a two-way mirror, is designed to gauge how secure is the crucial relationship between mother and child.
Okay, this bunny is going to go here, and that bunny will be on top.
The value of the test has been established in studies that would watch a child, 1-year-old, and then follow it up and interview them about their relationships to their parents when they were 21 years old. So we're quite confident in the long-term significance of this relationship.
After several minutes' play, the mother is signaled to leave the room.
Sweetie, I'll be back in 1 minute, okay? I'll get you back in 1 minute.
Is it upsetting for you? Shame, I feel. But she'll survive. The key moment in the experiment is the child's reaction to her mother's return.
Hi. Hi. It's okay.
The important clue is whether the baby's able to become calmed down by the contact with the mother and get back to play. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. But you see, when the mother was out, she was only interested in the mother, no interest in the toys. Now she has a contact with the mother. She's beginning to show a little interest in the environment, and shortly she'll be right back with the toys where we started.
So you would call this a secure one?
Yes, yes.
She's certainly much happier.
Goes to the door following her. Now, we sent the mother right back in. The point here is not to distress the baby. We're just trying to challenge it. The baby puts her hands to her face in a sad expression, puts her face down. When she picks her up, she keeps her head down, her arms out, and then she sits in the chair holding the baby. The baby's still sullen. He's low-keyed.
So you would call this insecure
Yes,
attachment?
insecure. He's avoidant. He's not engaging her, and it's not the reunion's not effective. And it's important to remember here that the thing that upset him was her absence. Her return should be the solution to his problem. Now this is another pattern that we see in babies who are not good at using their mother as a secure base at home. This baby is also insecure. But you'll see, we got a look at his play before the separation. The mother's left, and when she returns, she picks him up. He can't calm down. He's still upset. She offers a toy to amuse him or to comfort him or to distract him, and he slaps it away. She offers another. He slaps it away. He's angry. He's We call these babies resistant or ambivalent because they both want her back and yet can't use the contact. We think that the difficulty is that in the past, when he sought comfort, she's been inconsistent as to whether she's available and responsive or not.
So, relating the observations made in the home to those found in the strange situation, Ainsworth described 3 classifications of security in 1-year-old children. In a secure attachment, the babies were distressed when mom leaves the room, but when she returns, they were rapidly soothed and began to explore the toys. Ainsworth found that this secure style was linked to responsive and attuned patterns of behavior observed in the home. For example, these were the moms who were quick to pick up their babies, but held them only as long as the infants wanted to be held. Babies in the insecure avoidant category typically didn't protest when mom left the room. They might even ignore her. When she returned, these avoidant babies sometimes just went on playing or went limp upon being held rather than cuddling up close. One very important finding is that although these avoidant babies do not appear to be distressed when mother leaves, their cortisol levels and heart rates betray that they are even more distressed than the secure babies who were crying their eyes out. Ainsworth hypothesized that this apparent detachment was defensive. In other words, these babies at 1 year of age had already learned that their mothers didn't respond well to their distress. These babies had learned to downregulate their upset. Rather than turning to mother for support, they turned away from her to explore the environment, for example, playing with toys. During home visits, the mothers of these avoidant babies were observed to have rebuffed or withdrawn from their distressed babies. Their attitude was characterized by emotional inhibition, aversion toward physical contact, and brusqueness, while they clearly encouraged autonomy. Go play with your toys, go read a book later, and generally, I don't want to hear about it. A third group, Ainsworth described as insecure ambivalent. Now, just so you know, in the attachment literature, sometimes these kids are also called anxious, preoccupied, or resistant. These babies were very preoccupied with mother's whereabouts. They were extremely distressed when she leaves the room, but also remained inconsolable when she returned. These ambivalent babies had an overfocus on relationship to the mother and a reluctance to explore the toys, even when she was present. During home observation, mothers of these insecure ambivalent children were unpredictable in terms of availability and sensitivity of response. These moms also tended to discourage their children's autonomy, perhaps with the attitude, I need you to stay with me to comfort me, but I am so preoccupied with my own suffering and so tend to be unpredictable in my availability. So the strange situation, along with the home studies, helped show that babies adapt to their parents' style of relating, specifically to the quality of the caretaker's emotional attunement and responsiveness. It's useful to think of attachment styles as attachment strategies. This is an important idea, that children adapt to their parents, to what their parents require in their behavior or can tolerate in their emotions. Our survival depends, both physically and emotionally, on maintaining a tie to our parents. And we learn very early what will fly and what will not fly. To stay connected to the person on whom our survival depends, we may have to massively suppress how we feel as in the case of the avoidant children, or inhibit our natural desire to explore the world, as in the case of the ambivalent children. We'll soon see how these ideas are expressed in the circle of security. Please note that the attachment styles I'm describing are research classifications. People are more complex in real life. Attachment represents one lens through which we may view the personality. Many factors contribute to a child's adjustment, including their temperament, the match with their parents' temperament, the child's physical health, sociocultural factors such as living in poverty or under various forms of oppression. Trauma matters, for example, like living in a war zone. And very importantly, the child's idiosyncratic way of making meaning of his experiences. For example, child psychoanalyst Henri Parens, with his mother's help, escaped from a Nazi detention camp at the age of 12. Somehow, by himself, he managed to make his way to the United States alone. His personality was forged in the collective trauma of the Holocaust. His mother and other family members died in the camps. So there's trauma, right? But he attributed his psychic survival to the knowledge in his bones that his mother loved him. That's secure attachment. He suffered that he had survived when his mother had not. So you wonder, did he blame himself for not saving her? Was he being punished for some childhood sin? Okay, those kinds of thoughts would be in the realm of meaning making. Now, I don't know what meaning he made of these painful circumstances, but meaning making adds another dimension to our experience, which is a kind of unpredictable psychic wildcard. Something else to keep in mind. The strange situation reveals a child's particular attachment to one primary caregiver in a very structured environment. The good news is that a child may have different attachment strategies with his different caregivers. A responsive grandparent, we see this grandfather here, a teacher, a babysitter, might provide an important contrast with a parent by offering a different style, perhaps even a more secure style of relating. Often as therapists, we are standing on the shoulders of that more secure early caregiver. Having learned about the work of Ainsworth, let's look again at the circle of security graphic. Hands represent the caretaker supporting the child's needs. The child going out to explore on the top of the circle needs her caregiver to support exploration by conveying delight, by watching over the child, by enjoying the child's exploits, and helping out, but only if needed, right? Not interfering, even allowing them to struggle a bit before you step in. The child coming in on the bottom of the circle needs his caregiver to welcome him by providing comfort and protection and help to organize his feelings. I love the way Circle describes the child's need for help with organizing feelings. For example, after a crying child has been held for a while and is calmer, Father might say, "You were scared because you fell," or "You were angry because your brother knocked over your building." In this way, the child's feelings are met with comfort and acceptance, and then feelings are attached to experiences with words. This is the heart of how we learn to bear and to express our feelings, what is known as affect regulation. Prominent neuropsychologist Alan Shore considers attachment theory to be a theory of affect regulation, meaning emotions that are well met by the parent, understood, and verbalized can become regulated, while those that are rejected or ignored become not me, foreign, unintegrated, uncomfortable. Consequently, the child lacks skill in bearing, understanding, and expressing herself in relation to those emotions. In this more highly developed circle graphic, the child's needs are identified while the parent's role is further delineated to be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. Circle of security accomplishes a lot in a small graphic, conveying that the child has a separate self with her own motivations. She is a separate being from her caretaker. You all may take this for granted, but it can be hard for many parents to maintain this sense of differentiation. For example, when your infant wakes you up every 2 hours to be fed, and you are desperate for sleep, is the baby bad? Well, he is having a bad impact on you, but what is his motivation? I mean, he just needs to eat. Another example might be when your child prefers to run after his friends on the playground rather than sit on your lap. From the child's point of view, he's exploring the world. But mother might feel unloved and cast off and become confused about what she's feeling and the child's needs, which are quite different. During an 8-week Circle of Security parenting group, parents are first invited to consider their child's behavior as communicating a need. Once that skill is established, parents are later invited to reflect, where upon the circle am I uncomfortable? Is it with being hands? Is it with supporting exploration or providing refuge and comfort? Which leads me to introduce the next important character in the attachment story. Mary Main is an American psychologist who had been a student of Mary Ainsworth. Main added 2 more integral pieces to how we think about attachment now. She identified a new category of attachment called disorganized, and she created a way of evaluating attachment styles in adults. Let's start with disorganized attachment. While reviewing videos of infants in the strange situation, Mary May noticed that there were some babies who had behaviors that could not clearly fit into Ainsworth's 3 categories. In these babies, she noticed bizarre or contradictory behavior upon reunion with mother. For example, freezing, collapsing, or expressions of fear. She categorized these babies as having a disorganized style. And this is how disorganized attachment is illustrated in the Circle of Security. There are no hands on the circle, meaning the parent is mean, weak, or gone. And so the child has no one to turn to. Let's look more closely into the disorganized classification. The term disorganized gets at the child's confusion. She is biologically drawn to seek proximity to the parent, while at the same time is afraid to approach that parent. This is important for clinicians to understand because people who fall into this category become highly distressed when their attachment ties are threatened. They may dissociate, lose the ability to think clearly, become violent, may resort to substance use just to tolerate their upset. Folks in this category are more likely to end up in mental health facilities or prison. We've always known that child abuse and neglect are bad for children, but the research on disorganized attachment shows just how bad. Attachment researchers have found that children with frightening parents, by the age of 5, may develop what's called a strategy of desperation. They adopt either a controlling punitive approach or a controlling caregiver approach or stance toward their parent. Now, this is important for mental health practitioners to know because many of us developed the controlling caregiving strategy just to survive with parents who are not doing well. The idea, I guess, is if I take care of mother or father well enough, perhaps they will ultimately take care of me. So many of us start out as social workers and other practitioners coming with that kind of background. And it's important to get care for yourself. Speaking about fear, here's how it breaks down by attachment style. Secure children fear actual danger. Avoidant children fear closeness. Ambivalent children fear separation. And disorganized children fear their parents. And what is going on with the parents of these disorganized children? It's easy to see how mean can be frightening. I'll give you something to cry about. But attachment research has shown that parents who are weak can also be frightening. For example, weak parents are those who become afraid when their child is angry, and so they are unable to help the child to organize and regulate that feeling. Or a weak parent may fail to protect her children from an abusing parent. Now, parents who are gone can also cause extreme fear. I mean, are you going to survive? Gone means neglectful, and which is so injurious, but in an invisible way. There's no bruises or broken bones, but instead an internal sense of shame or worthlessness or feeling that you have no right to exist. Neglect can look like leaving children alone or in distress for long periods. It could be caregivers that are high on some substance or so self-preoccupied as to be unable to see the child as a separate person with her own mind and needs. So, what is going on in the mind of the parent? Mary Main developed a new research tool to discern the attachment style of adults called the Adult Attachment Interview. Also known as the AAI, it's a recorded interview lasting 1 to 2 hours, in which adults are asked to describe their relationships with their primary caregivers. They're asked questions like, tell me 5 words that reflect your relationship with your mother. And then the adult is asked to give an example, a specific memory to support each adjective. Another question is, when you were upset as a child, what would you do? Some folks might reply, I'd run to my mother, or I'd hide in a closet, or I don't remember. Another question asks whether parents ever threatened them in any way. In addition, they're asked about any major losses. This technique has been described as one of surprising the unconscious. The questions from the adult attachment interview protocol can be found on the web and can be used selectively in your own work. The interview transcripts are then scored by highly trained evaluators. Now, this is very interesting and, of course, completely different from the strange situation. What the evaluator is looking for is, can the adult maintain a coherent narrative while feeling strong emotions when asked to recall specific memories of attachment, loss, and trauma? So coherence is what matters while feeling strong emotions. Can the adult be truthful, succinct, relevant, and clear in their speech? Mary Main was able to discern what she calls an adult's state of mind with regard to attachment by the way people speak about their early experiences. The key to a secure state of mind in an adult was not the absence of trauma, but coherence and the capacity to reflect openly and collaboratively with the interviewer while considering emotionally painful memories. So let's take a look at the attachment categories that Mary Main defined for adults, which is in the top row beside the adult attachment interview. Secure attachment looks like this. The adult speech is coherent and collaborative with the interviewer, and they clearly value relationships. You'll see I have a little asterisk next to the words earns secure. It's actually possible to become more secure as an adult by engaging in secure functioning love relationships, and of course, by working in psychotherapy. We'll talk more about that later. The secure adults with their children are found to be sensitive, responsive, and attuned. And as a romantic partner, they are dependable and empathic. Stan Tatkin, who many of you may know, in his CD set, Your Brain on Love, refers to secure folks in relationships as anchors. Stan Tatkin, has written a number of books for popular audiences that help to develop secure functioning in adult love relationships. Now, in the next category, dismissive adults. In the adult attachment interview, they have few memories of childhood relationships. They may give vague examples and may be either idealizing or devaluing of these relationships, like mother was an angel or mother was terrible, without giving specific examples. Now, remember, these folks learned to quash their distress as babies. You know, you have to also appreciate the ability to suppress feelings can be a great asset in certain professions, right? Brain surgeons, airplane pilots, right? When the weather gets turbulent, you don't want to hear your pilot coming on and saying, you know, I'm really, really very worried right now. People, I'm starting to cry, right? We need them to hold themselves together. So as parents, they tend to support exploration and be dismissing of emotional needs. As romantic partners, they tend toward being aloof, distant, and intellectual. And this is the group that fears dependency, and Stan Tatkin refers to them as islands. The next group, preoccupied, also known as ambivalent or resistant, tend to speak with a flood of words and intense, often angry emotions. They can become incoherent when describing painful memories. They just really, they take up a lot more time and space with their verbiage. And we all have friends like this, you know, when they call, you see who it is on the phone and you think, how long do I have here? Do I have the hour I know it's going to take to speak with this person? As a parent, preoccupied folks can be self-focused, inconsistent, and tend to discourage exploration. And as a romantic partner, they tend to fear separation and may become demanding and angry. And Tatkin refers to them as waves. People with avoidant and preoccupied styles often partner with each other, initially finding the other's style reassuring or enlivening. But things can go south when the preoccupied partner's emotional needs cause the avoidant partner to move away, like they're too much. And the moving away causes the preoccupied partner to ratchet up the emotional demands. Many people who come to couples counseling are in that difficult pattern. Okay, for the last category, Mary Main classified these folks as unresolved in relation to trauma on the adult attachment interview. These folks had very significant childhood trauma, and often when they spoke, their speech would become incoherent. As they were speaking, they would sometimes dissociate or confuse past and the present, like actually switching tenses, almost as though they were living in an old movie most of the time. They may exhibit lapses in reasoning, saying things like, she died because I forgot to think of her. As parents, they may be unpredictable, frightened, frightening, or emotionally gone. As emotional partners, I would say that their unmetabolized trauma burdens the relationship, and that these folks really require serious therapy if they are to protect their love relationships and, of course, to feel better themselves. We will return to the adult attachment interview in a few minutes, as this becomes very important for understanding the intergenerational transmission of trauma. While we're on the subject, this table shows the prevalence of the various attachment styles in American, middle-class, non-clinical populations. Okay, these are folks who are not in any kind of mental health treatment. These numbers are for the United States and would likely differ among various cultures. In the world of attachment research, people are assigned a primary attachment style, such as secure or insecure avoidant or insecure preoccupied. But the designation disorganized may be added to the primary designation when fear has been in the picture. If you take a look at the bottom row, the numbers are followed by an asterisk. So that's the prevalence of disorganized attachment in the, you could say, typical middle-class population in the US. However, these percentages for infants can go up to as high as 70 or 80% when their mothers had been abused as children, or when their mothers had psychiatric illness or were abusing substances. And for the adults, it can go much, much higher than 18% in populations who abuse substances or who have PTSD. Why does having some knowledge of these categories help us as therapists? I believe they can help us maintain a more empathic attitude toward our patients who can be difficult to treat. They help us understand what is going on underneath behavior, right? To understand the relational patterns that whereas the difficult behavior we might read as resisting the treatment. So I can give a few examples. I think about a little boy who was treated by a counselor in school, and every week she would pick him up from his classroom and take him to her office. He would not look at her. He held his head down. He would not smile or answer her greetings, week after week after week. And this was very difficult for the therapist because she was trying to connect with him. But after, I think, months, he was playing in her office with his back turned to her as usual. And he built like a tower with a little plastic man inside the tower, inside the building. And then he smashed the tower down on top of the little guy. And the therapist just said, wow, that guy is really all alone. And at that moment, for the first time, he looked at her. So that would be an avoidant child, probably disorganized as well. And just an example of how long it can take to make contact and how patient you may have to be until a moment when you're actually able to connect to something they're feeling. Another example is a woman I treated, 40 years ago, lovely, bright young woman who had just a tremendous trauma history. When she began with me, she would speak nonstop during the entire session. I never could get a word in. Then she would go home and call me and leave me a 15 or 20-minute voicemail. And the next day, the same thing, another voicemail, and the next day, another voicemail, very long. So I quickly realized I needed to see her much more often. And she was in the situation, which is very common, where she came from a family where her parents gave her a lot to worry about. She was scared a lot, and so she had a lot of upset inside of her, while the parents gave her no help organizing her feelings. So she was just left with like a belly full of disorganized emotion. And so actually the treatment was very, very helpful to her to get all that sorted out, and she did very well. I think I saw her for 5 or 6 years at 3 times a week. The last example I'll give is from the movie Moonlight, which was a wonderful movie, painful movie. And it shows a little boy coming home to his apartment day after day. And he never knows what to expect. And one day he comes home and his mother's angry with him because he's late. Another day he comes home and she's in the bedroom with a strange man. Another day he comes home and she's high. Another day he comes home and the house is empty and the television set is gone. And what you see is, as he's entering the apartment, the screen goes out of focus each time, which I thought was such a brilliant way of showing how this kid would dissociate to bear what he was about to experience. He never knew what he was about to experience. And so dissociation will come up in treatment and as a sign to show us that whatever the person is remembering or talking about is almost or is unbearable. I mean, they cannot hold it in mind, because to hold it in mind would just almost cause their mind to shatter. So whenever you see when you see dissociation in your practice, you just have to know there's something very, very painful and probably very fearful that's going on in their memory from their childhood. So we can look below a patient's behavior and think about their underlying attachment style. What does their behavior or way of speaking tell us about their early relationships and what they expect in their bones from other people? Which brings us to the final hero in our attachment story, Peter Fonagy, who is a British psychoanalyst and research psychologist who brought attachment theory back into the mainstream of clinical psychoanalysis. His 1991 research paper demonstrated the transmission of attachment styles from mother to child. Here's what he did. Fonagy administered Mary Maine's adult attachment interview to 100 mothers who were expecting their first child. And then at 1 year follow-up, these women were seen with their 12-month-old infants in the strange situation. He found that the mothers' representations of attachment on the adult attachment interview before the child was born, predicted the attachment pattern between baby and mother 75% of the time. And that is a stunning finding. I thought a really brilliant research also. Here's a summary of the way attachment styles are transmitted from mother to child, as indicated by Fonagy's study and actually many others. Secure goes to secure, dismissive goes to avoidant, preoccupied to ambivalent, and unresolved with respect to trauma to disorganized, 75% of the time. Why does this matter? This research confirms a fundamental psychoanalytic understanding about the importance of early childhood experiences. This research establishes empirically that working models of relationship, these are non-conscious or procedural patterns of relating, persist for a lifetime and are passed from generation to generation. And of course, all of us therapists are particularly interested in the question, how do we alter patterns of mistreatment so that trauma is not passed down from one generation to the next? Here's another important finding from Fonagy and colleagues from a 2015 study on the intergenerational transmission of attachment styles. The study focused on mothers who had suffered childhood abuse and neglect. 83% of their infants were classified as insecure, and 44% manifested disorganized attachment. 83% were insecure. researchers shifted focus to look carefully at the other 17%, at the mothers whose children were secure, even though they had been traumatized as themselves as children. Significantly, the mother's capacity to be reflective about her childhood trauma was a key protective factor. Now, what does that mean? The capacity to be reflective about trauma means that a person can know, the way I was treated as a child hurt me, and I'm not going to do that to my child. That piece of awareness can make the whole difference. The parent can reflect on a painful pattern and say, it stops here with me. Fonagy addresses the mother's state of mind as the cradle in which her child's mind develops. Specifically, the child's capacity for emotional regulation and reflective functioning. And it's true for all of us. The house you grew up in is your parents' state of mind. Now, that could be a little scary, but wait, it's actually possible to develop what is called earned security. One's attachment style is not immutable. Secure attachment is a state of mind that can be earned. Yes, we can move in the direction of more secure relating after childhood. Again, what the adult attachment interview helped identify, it's not our histories per se, but our state of mind, or how we make sense of our history that is important. Can we become reflective, right? Can we reflect on painful experiences while maintaining a coherent and related state of mind? Or do we become swamped by overwhelming feelings, or alternatively, cut ourselves off from feeling and memory? Therapeutic relationships, as well as other caring, reliable relationships, can repair old emotional injuries and build new secure patterns. Nancy Williams, in a presentation some years ago, cited research that suggests that one can move from an insecure to a secure attachment style from a 7-year or longer secure intimate relationship, or a 2 to 3 year course of psychotherapy with a well-tuned, reliable clinician. Psychoanalytic therapy at a robust intensity, 2, 3, 4, even 5 times a week, can strengthen our psychic muscle to understand, bear, and express our emotions constructively. Also, to reflect on how our earlier experiences are being repeated in our current relationships with partners and children. And importantly, how our early patterns of emotional acceptance or rejection are being replayed internally in relation to our own selves. For example, depression often involves an internal state of crushing rejection toward certain emotions, often anger, and the desire to individuate. So now let's turn to the way in which Circle of Security helps parents to become aware of their attachment patterns. The program works to develop reflective functioning in parents by helping them to notice, where on the circle do I feel uncomfortable? Where on the circle does my ability to be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind become limited? When do I find myself becoming mean, weak, or gone?
Parents. Throughout history, we've struggled to get it right. We hope we won't pass on our emotional issues to our kids, and we swear we won't make the same mistakes our parents did. We all have great intentions, but something seems to get in the way. Let's look at what that might be. At Circle of Security Parenting, we believe that being emotionally available to our children and their needs is the key to doing our best as parents. We call emotional availability being with. It means teaching emotional intelligence by being with our children in all their feelings, like sadness, joy, anger, curiosity, pain, frustration, excitement, and so on. Being with children helps them understand, trust, and move on from feelings. And knowing someone is with them in their feelings helps children feel less overwhelmed and more secure. Decades of research backs this up. For parents, some of this comes easily, but other times our children express emotions that make us uncomfortable, so we pull away or try to overrule their feelings, which leaves them on their own. We do this because our children's feelings can trigger strong emotions in us. We think of it like this: our history during childhood of how core people responded to our different emotions creates the background music for how we experience our children's feelings. Let's look at this example. This girl and her father have been enjoying time together in the park, but suddenly aware of the time, Dad says, "We need to go." When the girl hears this, she starts crying and gets increasingly angry. All at once, the dad's background music changes. The background music that is playing for the father right now, we call shark music. As it turns out, the dad's own mother was uncomfortable with loud displays of emotion, and she didn't know how to handle them. So throughout his childhood, she repeatedly told her son it was pathetic to cry, and she never ever asked him about his feelings of sadness or anger. His ability to deal with his daughter's emotion now is greatly affected by the experience with his mother then. Shark music, we're rarely aware it's playing, but it's our past experiences telling us to be afraid of or uncomfortable with a feeling or need that is actually safe. When our shark music limits our ability to respond to these feelings, our children learn to hide or feel ashamed of them. This is a problem because we're teaching our children to fear emotions that are actually both safe and essential in life. Most of us experience shark music with one emotion or another, and it's different for everyone. But whenever it is triggered, our ability to respond to our children's needs is limited. The good news is, by simply calling it by name and reflecting on what our children need in the moment, we can turn down our shark music. This is so important because if we can learn to manage our history of negative experiences and perceptions, we can respond to the truth of our child's current situation and be with them in it. Ultimately, this will help our children grow up with a better ability to understand and share more of the emotions they experience. There's no escaping it. Strong feelings are a challenge to manage as parents, but our children always benefit when we have an accurate response to what's happening, rather than reacting to the shark music we're bringing into the relationship. Remember, there's no such thing as perfect parenting, and blame never helped anyone feel more secure. That includes blaming ourselves. But the more often we can identify our shark music, the better off our children will be.
I love that video. So, as a mother, I'd hear shark music most often when my daughter went out on the top of the circle. I'd experience intense fear when she went away to camp, off riding a horse, out driving a car. It's not surprising that her explorations evoked intense fear in me because when I was a child, my younger sister died suddenly. Knowing this, I had to work really hard not to inhibit her freedom or joy in exploring. If I were to see only my shark music rather than to see my child and her needs, I would have kept her locked in her room forever, like Rapunzel. I wish every new parent would be told that as your child grows, they will evoke memories in yourself as a child from when you were the same age. And if they are pre-verbal memories, they are likely to emerge as action patterns or what's called procedural memories. You might find yourself doing to your child exactly what was done to you, enacting or acting out a memory. I think of these procedural memories as they come up as a living memory Now, that might be just fine if you find yourself singing a lullaby or playing a silly game with your baby that you hadn't remembered. Or you might find yourself acting mean or weak, and then it's time to pause and reflect. One of the most important lessons for me from Circle is that whenever I find myself thinking my child is bad, or my partner is bad, or my patient is bad, I am likely hearing my own shark music. It's time to pause and reflect on my own upset and to try to separate my reactions from what the other person may need or be trying to communicate. When a parent really gets this lesson, I think of it as opening the door to reflective functioning. There is a separation of the child's need from the parent's response. The parent's internal response is identified as belonging to me. That's my shark music, rather than being something about my child. I mean, think of the phrase, my child is driving me crazy. You could translate that into, my child is expressing a need that is triggering me to feel upset. Before moving on, there's one proviso. Even though Circle of Security parenting can open the door to reflective functioning, it is not an entire treatment for parents who are survivors of childhood trauma. I mean, who could possibly be cured in 8 weeks, right? So it's not a magic bullet. But when a parent can begin to reflect on their own reactions, a world of self-discovery and recovery becomes possible. It's a way of opening the door to breaking the cycle of intergenerational trauma. So, parents, it's never too late. Relationships with children can improve at any age. First, see your child's need. Think of behavior as a form of communication, and then reflect on your own shark music. Attuning 30% of the time is considered good enough. Repair ruptures as soon as possible between yourself and your child, and join a Circle of Security parenting group. Now, let me go back. What is meant by attuning 30% of the time? Does that mean we can just ignore the kids 70% of the time? Well, no. That number comes from the studies of Ed Tronick and also Beatrice Beebe. What they have found by videotaping infant-parent interactions and then slowing down the video, they have found a kind of intricate dance between mother and baby. The two partners, the infant and the parent, are dancing smoothly about 30% of the time, meaning we're connected emotionally, we're on the same page. Okay, we're in connection. While the rest of the time, they're either mismatched or trying to seek repair and get back into connection. So mismatched is something like your baby's crying in the backseat of the car and you're driving in traffic, right? They're just going to cry for a while, and it's not going to be good for them. But that's just the way it is. But after that, you seek repair and to get back into connection. So Ed Tronick states, in typical healthy parent-infant pairs, on average, 70% of the interactions are out of sync. In analyzing these videotapes, we discovered that the most important part was not the mismatch, but the repair. So you can see that getting good at repair, right, in their relationship with parents and caregivers, can give children the confidence that they can both fail and recover in close relationships. Okay, therapists out there, you are also people. You have an attachment history. Your shark music may be triggered at work as well as at home. A strong capacity for self-reflection is essential in your work. Every one of us needs to engage in significant psychotherapy. You can join a circle parenting group or become a Circle of Security parenting facilitator. And you could study at the PCC. We have courses and study groups and training programs in psychoanalytic therapy. All of these things you can do to develop yourself to become more and more attuned with others. Before we end, let me give you some background. Circle of Security Parenting was developed by Kent Hoffman, Glenn Cooper, and Bert Powell. My teachers were Kent and Bert, both amazing human beings. The three of them have devoted a lifetime to translating object relations theory and attachment concepts into reflective teaching materials for parents. They developed their ideas in working with teenage parents, homeless families, and incarcerated mothers. In 2014, they published an important book for clinicians. The title is Circle of Security Intervention. That book describes a 20-week model for infant mental health specialists working with parents in groups. They later developed an 8-week parenting model, and that's the one I've been speaking about today. These 8-week Circle of Security groups for parents can be run by mental health workers or anyone who helps parents with young children. For example, pediatricians, preschool teachers, child welfare workers, and experienced parents. Currently, Circle of Security Parenting is being taught all over the world with teaching materials available in Arabic, French, Hebrew, Spanish, Japanese, Italian, Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, Romanian, and Mandarin. I want to add that our Psychoanalytic Center of the Carolinas has adopted Circle as our primary community service program. We sponsor trainings to become a Circle of Security parenting facilitator. So we educate group leaders, not parents directly. These trained Circle facilitators go out into their communities, into preschools, faith organizations, community centers, where they lead groups for parents. In this way, our Psychoanalytic Center maintains its educational focus while sending out a new crop of leaders into the state, about 70 per year, year after year, to reach groups of parents. Imagine the impact over time, all of those trained leaders working with all of those parents who care for all of those children. Currently, there are Circle of Security leaders in 60 out of 100 counties in North Carolina. And although this program was designed for use with groups of parents, it can also be used by preschool teachers and in individual counseling with parents. I want to leave you with a few resources. You can easily find websites for these groups by putting their names into your search engine. Circle of Security International is the group that created the graphics and videos we saw today. They provide training for facilitators, right, group leaders, both in person and online, all over the world. The Psychoanalytic Center of the Carolinas sponsors local in-person Circle facilitator training. We also provide courses, study groups, and full training programs in psychoanalytic theory and practice. Membership is open to mental health professionals and others who share an interest in psychoanalysis. The Lucy Daniel Center is a psychoanalytic treatment program for children and families in Cary, North Carolina. They offer Circle parenting groups and Circle-informed individual therapy for parents. Circle Together North Carolina is a statewide network that promotes Circle programs throughout North Carolina. Their website helps parents to find Circle parenting groups, and importantly, the website links facilitators who are leading parenting groups with support and coaching. Lastly, the Attachment Network of North Carolina is a multidisciplinary group run out of UNC and Duke departments of psychiatry that meets every other month by Zoom to share attachment-informed resources with practitioners who work with families. And here are a couple of books that I can highly recommend. For parents, you should read Raising a Secure Child, written by the founders of Circle of Security International. And for therapists, I'd suggest reading Attachment and Psychotherapy by David Wallen. I use this book as the text for my course on attachment in adult psychotherapy. It contains the most excellent summary of contemporary psychoanalytic thinking, and then illustrates how one might adapt your treatment approach to reach folks who present with various attachment strategies in your office. I'll let John Bowlby have the last word. No variables have more far-reaching effects on personality development than a child's experience within the family. Starting during his first months in his relation to both parents, he builds up working models of how attachment figures are likely to behave toward him in any of a variety of situations. And on all those models are based his expectations and therefore all his plans for the rest of his life. Thank you for listening.